We need to have a conversation.
Look, if you know a good lawyer, you call him.
I need your help.
I made a pretty sizable investment with Cammy.
An investment you'll lose.
If you lose this, the thing you love the most, that's the first thing I'll take.
So the Landman Season 3 trailer just dropped, and I genuinely was not prepared for what I saw. Cammy is literally begging Tommy to come back. The same woman who fired him without blinking. The same woman who called Nate right after and tried to hand him Tommy's job like it was nothing, is now standing there asking Tommy to return. And Tommy? He doesn't even flinch. That look on his face said everything. He is done. He is completely, 100% done with Cammy and M-Tex. And honestly, after everything she put him through, can you even blame the man? Because I can't, not even a little bit. This trailer packed so much into just a few minutes, and I need to break down every single second of it for you because there is a lot happening, and some of it I did not see coming at all. Let's start from the very beginning of the trailer, because the way it opens already sets the tone for everything that Season 3 is going to be. We see Cammy sitting alone in that big office that used to feel like her whole world, and it already looks different. It looks emptier. It looks heavier, and you can feel it immediately. That thing she was holding onto so tightly is starting to slip right through her fingers, and there is nothing she can do to stop it. The energy in that office used to feel powerful when Tommy was running around making deals and keeping everything together. Now it just feels quiet in the worst possible way. And that silence is doing more storytelling than any dialogue could. Because what we're watching is a woman who bet everything on herself and is now sitting in the middle of the consequences. She thought she could run M-Tex alone. She thought she didn't need Tommy. She thought she was strong enough to carry Monty's legacy on her own shoulders and prove to everyone that she was more than just his widow. But Season 3 is already showing us in the very first moments of this trailer that the cost of that decision is going to be brutal. And I think, deep down, Cammy always knew this moment was coming. She just refused to admit it, because admitting it would mean admitting she was wrong. And Cammy does not do that easily. That stubbornness is what made her interesting as a character, but it's also what's been destroying her one bad decision at a time. And now, we're finally at the point where she can't hide from it anymore. The trailer makes it very clear that M-Tex is struggling in a way that Cammy cannot fix by sheer willpower alone. The company needs real leadership, real relationships, real trust, and she burned all of that when she fired Tommy. Because it wasn't just Tommy she lost that day. It was everything that came with him. His connections, his reputation, his ability to walk into any room and make people believe in whatever he was selling. Galino made it crystal clear that his loyalty was tied to Tommy, not to M-Tex, not to Cammy, not to Monty's memory. Just Tommy. And now that Tommy is gone, that $44 million didn't go to Cammy. It went to CTT. It went to the man she threw away. And watching her sit in that office, knowing all of that is heavy. It's genuinely heavy. Because regardless of everything she did, you can't watch someone lose everything they fought for and feel absolutely nothing. The trailer gives us just enough of that quiet desperation before it shifts. And when it shifts hard. Because that's when we see Tommy for the first time in the trailer. And the contrast between where he is and where Cammy is could not be more stark. While she's sitting in that silence, Tommy is moving. Tommy is building. Tommy is already in the middle of something bigger than anything he ever did for M-Tex. And the energy around him is completely different. He looks lighter somehow, like a man who finally put down a weight he'd been carrying for years. CTT is not just a company at this point. It's a statement. It's Tommy telling the whole industry that he doesn't need anyone else's table because he built his own. And Cooper being right there next to him as president makes it even more personal, because this isn't just business for Tommy. This is family. This is everything he always wanted and never quite had when he was grinding away for other people's dreams. The trailer spends a good amount of time showing us the CTT team coming together. And I have to say, seeing all of them in the same frame feels electric. Rebecca as COO and Chief Counsel, Nate handling the finances, Dale running exploration, Thomas in charge of drilling, Ariana keeping everything organized. This is not a startup. This is a machine. And Tommy built it from scratch in what feels like no time at all. Because when Tommy decides to move, he moves fast. That meeting with Galino that we saw at the end of Season 2 was just the beginning. And Season 3 is going to show us exactly what happens when that machine starts running at full speed. But here's the thing about this trailer that really got to me. It's not just a celebration of Tommy's new chapter. There's tension underneath all of it. Real tension. Because Galino didn't invest $44 million out of the kindness of his heart. That man doesn't do anything without expecting something in return. And that threat we heard in the Season 2 finale is still sitting there like a loaded gun. Tommy knows it. You can see it in the way he carries himself in this trailer. There's confidence there, absolutely. But there's also something else. A wariness. Like a man who knows the ground he's standing on is solid for now, but could shift at any moment. And that's what makes CTT's story so compelling going into Season 3. It's not just about whether they'll succeed. It's about what success is going to cost them. Now let's get into the moment that everyone is talking about. Because the scene where Cammy reaches out to Tommy is the emotional centerpiece of this entire trailer, and it hit differently than I expected it to. I want to be honest about that. When I first heard that Cammy was going to be begging Tommy to come back, I thought it would feel satisfying. I thought it would feel like the moment we all waited for, that perfect full circle instant where she finally has to face what she did. And it does feel like that, but it also feels like something else at the same time. It feels sad. And I think that's what makes it such good television, because the writers didn't take the easy route and make Cammy a villain you can just dismiss. They made her a person, a deeply flawed, deeply stubborn, deeply broken person who made terrible decisions for reasons that actually made sense to her, even when they made no sense to anyone watching. When she reaches out to Tommy in this trailer, it's not with arrogance. That's the thing. The Cammy we saw in Season 2, who fired him with that cold certainty, who called Nate right after, like she hadn't just done something irreversible, that version of her is gone. What we see in this trailer is a woman who has finally run out of road. She's looked at every other option, tried every other angle, and she keeps arriving at the same conclusion. She needs Tommy. Not MTEX needs Tommy, she needs Tommy. And there's a vulnerability in the way she approaches him that feels almost uncomfortable to watch, because we're not used to seeing Cammy like this. She's always been the woman who kept moving no matter what. Even when she was grieving Monty, even when everyone around her was telling her to stop, she kept moving. That was her whole identity. Momentum, control. The illusion that if she just kept pushing hard enough, everything would eventually bend to her will. And now, the momentum has stopped, and what's left underneath it is this raw, tired, almost desperate energy that makes you feel for her even when part of you thinks she absolutely deserves to be exactly where she is. The trailer doesn't give us the full conversation between them, which is smart because it leaves us sitting with all the questions. What does she say to him? Does she apologize? Does she try to frame it as a business proposal to protect her pride? Does she admit that firing him was the worst decision she ever made? Or does she find some way to justify it even now? Knowing Cammy, I think she starts with the business angle because that's safer for her emotionally. She'd walk in there with numbers and projections and reasons why a partnership between MTEX and CTT makes strategic sense before she'd ever let herself say the words, "I was wrong." But I also think Tommy sees right through it. He always does. That's always been the dynamic between them. She performs strength, and he reads straight through the performance to whatever's actually going on underneath. And in this trailer, the moment where Tommy looks at her and doesn't immediately respond is one of the most loaded silences I have seen in this show. Because that silence isn't cruelty. It's not satisfaction either, even though he'd have every right to feel some. It's more like exhaustion mixed with clarity. Like a man who already made his peace with this chapter closing and isn't sure he wants to reopen it just because the person who closed it is now asking him to. Tommy has always been someone who leads with loyalty. It's his greatest strength, and it's also the thing that people like Cammy have taken advantage of for years. He gave everything to MTEX. He gave everything to making that company work. And when she decided she didn't need him anymore, she didn't just fire an employee. She cut off the person who had kept that whole operation breathing. And Tommy knows that. He knew it the moment it happened. So watching him in this trailer face the possibility of going back, even just hearing her out, feels like a massive moment for his character arc. Because the question isn't really whether Cammy needs him. We all know she does. The question is whether Tommy is the kind of man who lets that matter anymore. Let's talk about Cooper for a second, because I feel like his role in Season 3 is going to be bigger and more complicated than people are expecting right now. In this trailer, we get glimpses of Cooper that tell a very interesting story if you're paying attention. On the surface, he looks like everything is going great. He's the president of CTT, he's standing next to his dad, he's finally in a position where his name means something in the industry. and that should feel like a win. And it is a win. But the trailer is already dropping hints that the pressure of that position is going to test Cooper in ways he hasn't been tested before. Because there's a difference between wanting to prove yourself and actually being in the seat where the proof is required. Cooper has always had that hunger to be taken seriously. He grew up watching Tommy navigate this brutal industry with nothing but his instincts and his reputation, and he always wanted that for himself. Now he has the title and the opportunity, but having it and being ready for it are two completely different things. The trailer shows us a moment where Cooper is in a room with people who are clearly pushing back on something, and the way he handles it tells you a lot about where his head is at. There's a flash of the old insecurity underneath the new confidence, and I think that's going to be one of the central tensions of his arc this season. He has to figure out who he is as a leader separate from being Tommy's son, because right now, the CTT brand is built heavily on Tommy's relationships and Tommy's reputation. Galino invested because of Tommy. The crew trusts the operation because of Tommy. And Cooper has to find a way to build his own credibility within that structure, without either hiding behind his dad or going so far in the other direction trying to prove himself that he makes reckless decisions. And we know from the trailer that reckless decisions are going to be on the table this season. There's a sequence that looks like it involves some kind of discovery out in the field, something unexpected. And Cooper's reaction to it suggests that whatever it is, it's the kind of thing that could either make CTT or seriously damage it, depending on how it's handled. Tommy clearly wants to handle it carefully. Cooper looks like he wants to move faster than that. And that tension between Tommy's experience and Cooper's ambition is going to drive a lot of the drama this season in ways that feel very real and very earned. Because this isn't just a father and son disagreeing about strategy. It's two different philosophies about how you survive and succeed in an industry that will absolutely destroy you if you make the wrong move at the wrong time. Tommy has the scars that teach you patience. Cooper doesn't have those scars yet, and Season 3 looks like it might be the season where he starts earning them. What also caught my attention in the trailer was Rebecca's positioning within CTT. As COO and Chief Counsel, she's carrying a serious amount of responsibility, and the trailer suggests that her role is going to go beyond just legal and operational oversight. There's something in the dynamic between her and Tommy in a few of these scenes that feels like she's functioning as the moral compass of the operation in a way. The voice that asks the harder questions when everyone else is caught up in the momentum of building something exciting. And in a company where the founder just walked away from a situation as messy as MTech's, having that voice in the room matters more than people might realize. Now I want to talk about Galino, because the trailer does something really interesting with him, and I think it sets up one of the most dangerous storylines of the season. On the surface, everything between Galino and CTT looks like a partnership. He wrote the checks, he made the investment, he showed up to that meeting at the end of Season 2 and gave Tommy exactly what he needed to get started. But if you've been paying attention to this show for any amount of time, you already know that nothing Galino does is straightforward. The man operates on a different level. He thinks 10 moves ahead, and every single thing he does, every smile, every handshake, every apparently generous gesture, is calculated. The $44 million wasn't charity, it was a leash. A very expensive, very well-disguised leash. And the trailer is starting to pull back the curtain on what holding that leash actually looks like in practice. There's a scene in the trailer where Galino shows up at a CTT meeting, and the energy in that room changes the second he walks in. You can see it on everyone's faces. Even Tommy, who is not someone who rattles easily, has a stillness about him in that moment that reads less like confidence and more like a man who is very carefully managing his reaction. Because Tommy knows. He knew when he took that money that he was inviting Galino into something personal, something that has his son's name on it, literally. And the weight of that decision is going to sit on him every single day of Season 3. Galino hasn't made any obvious moves yet in what we've seen from this trailer, but that's almost more unsettling than if he had. Because the threat isn't always in what someone does. Sometimes it's in what they haven't done yet, but absolutely could. And Galino is the kind of man who lets that possibility breathe. He lets people feel the potential of what he could do as a way of keeping them in line without ever having to pull a trigger. That's sophisticated control, and Tommy is smart enough to recognize it, and scared enough of it to feel it, even when everything on the surface looks fine. What I think is going to happen in Season 3 is that Galino is going to start making requests, small ones at first. Things that seem reasonable enough that Tommy can't really push back without looking paranoid or ungrateful. But those small requests are going to start building into something bigger, and eventually, Tommy is going to hit a point where what Galino is asking for crosses a line that Tommy isn't willing to cross. And that's when we're going to see what this partnership actually costs. The trailer gives us just enough of that trajectory to make you feel genuinely anxious about where it's heading. And the piece that makes it even more complicated is Cooper, because if Galino ever decides that the most effective way to control Tommy is through his son, we are going to see a version of Tommy that this show has only hinted at before. That protective dad energy we talked about after the Season 2 finale is going to collide head-on with the reality of being financially and professionally tied to someone who doesn't play by normal rules. And when that collision happens, it is going to be one of the most intense things this show has ever done. So where does all of this leave us going into Season 3? And what is this trailer ultimately telling us about what kind of season we're about to get? Because when you step back and look at everything together, the picture it paints is really fascinating. This is not going to be a straightforward success story for CTT. It's not going to be a simple redemption arc for Cammy. It's not going to be one clean story with a clear hero and a clear villain. It's going to be messy and complicated and full of moments where every single character is both right and wrong at the same time, which is exactly what made this show so compelling in the first place. Tommy is building something real, but he's building it on a foundation that has Galino's fingerprints all over it, and that is going to create cracks that no amount of hard work can completely fix. Cooper is stepping into a role he's always wanted, but the version of himself that wanted it might not be fully equipped to handle the reality of it. Cammy is facing the consequences of every stubborn decision she made, but she's also still Cammy, which means she's not going to go quietly, and she's not going to stop fighting, even when fighting is clearly making everything worse. Nate is in a position where his loyalty is finally aligned with where he actually wants to be. But loyalty only carries you so far when the money starts talking and the pressure starts building. And Rebecca is going to be the person holding the ethical line in an industry, in a situation where that line gets pushed every single day. What this trailer is setting up is a season about what happens when everything you wanted finally arrives, and you realize the cost of it is higher than the price tag you thought you were paying. Every character in this show is about to find out what they're actually made of. Not the version of themselves they perform for the room. The real version. The one that shows up when the stakes are high enough that pretending isn't an option anymore. And that is the kind of television that keeps you watching, keeps you talking, keeps you coming back every single week because you genuinely don't know how it's going to end, and you're not sure you're ready for it when it does. Season 3 of Landman is shaping up to be the most intense chapter of this story yet. And honestly, after that trailer, fall 2026 cannot come fast enough. If you want more Landman content, make sure you follow because there's a lot more coming and you do not want to miss any of it.